And so September is here. Suddenly, the sun is weaker, golden, and more angular in the mid-morning. The lower light intensity makes the colours of the world more discernible, and the duration of daylight is more in line with a better sleep schedule. The air is suddenly damper, cooler, and wetter, and it brings back old memories of new beginnings. The starting of school. And with any luck, you would have a new backpack, jacket, or would have grown a little, something that would have made your reappearance at school more exciting. The blowing of cold air through the rushing leaves brought with it new timetables, new teachers, yet the same sort of introductory lessons to each subject. The wind decides whether we will get short showers of rain or the last glimmer of summer, but with any luck, it will be a mix of both of them, as if it's just on the border. Puddles laden with rotten leaves, but give the air a sort of fresh feeling, reflecting the richer colours of light coming off the buildings. I love September. But this time, I have no school to go back to, and no schedule to adhere to, and no gym to train in. I hope I won't have to spend this whole season indoors. Well, here's to September. So it's currently morning, and what I do is I've been doing a lot of reading in the mornings every day. I've been reading Cured, and it's been really interesting. One of the things I'm trying to do is I'm trying to read more. I'm trying to gain a more holistic, scholarly, kind of in-depth understanding of some of the topics I'm interested in, rather than just a superficial, surface level kind of understanding. At the end of I've been highlighting, and at the end of every chapter I've been writing things down so that I can try and remember them. It's a really interesting book. The first kind of chunk of the book focuses a lot on about nutrition. The book is about people who have healed from incurable diseases, and it studies the outliers, it studies the case studies. And the author makes the point that he's looked at the radical diet changes made by lots of different people, and they're all different, they all vary, but they all have some of the same things in common. And he makes the point that it's not about eliminating one type of food group, that he says there's no silver bullet, there's no one thing you have to change, and it's more about the nutritional density, he calls it, of food groups, rather than to what food groups they belong to, because often there are studies contradicting each other. And he picks apart different case studies, and he shows that, like, okay, they've cut out certain foods like refined sugar, refined carbs, and they've added more vegetables, more certain things. The author also makes another case that I think he talks about in the latter half of the book, which is that your thoughts, your feelings, these are also things that you're putting into your body. For example, I just read a chapter that talked about a lady who was like having like a panic attack, and you know, she was going under a lot of stress. The author makes the case that the doctors, they don't ask people this in the hospital, and that she was given blood thinners and, you know, stuff like that to kind of like treat like a heart attack kind of thing. So yeah, so I think he's going to go into more in depth about how those thoughts and feelings can affect someone's physical health the same way a diet can. Also, one really interesting fact that I thought was really interesting that was posited in the first section of the book: immune cells have neuroreceptors on them, which means that they can communicate with the nervous system. So when you see like a group of neurons and you see them connected, you see them talking to each other via the electrical signals, right? They can also give an electrical signal to the immune cells, which is really interesting, because then there's nothing separating the immune cells from the nervous cells, from the nervous system. And the nervous system are our thoughts, our feelings, our fears. So it's really interesting. Been trying to read and educate myself and become super like scholarly on these topics. I don't know if I've said this, but I've been reading a lot of Harry Potter, and you read like characters like Dumbledore and you're impressed by their intellectual prowess. You see that wit really takes you far in certain scenarios. So been reading, annotating, highlighting certain bits. So yeah. Then after I'm reading that, I'll read some Harry Potter with a hot chocolate, since it's that season. I like this because in the last book, Hagrid took on a whole herd of centaurs and like 5 auras at the same time, so it's pretty cool. The rain arrives and all this suddenly starts growing, then I can get a job as well, huh? Look at that. Woo. So I learned something really insightful reading this yesterday, which is how sugar causes inflammation, or how sugar and other toxins and stuff causes inflammation. So it gives sugar as the kind of like first example. And the book was describing how sugar on a microscopic level is like a crystal. And when that kind of like crystal, rigid, hard structure goes into your blood, it kind of bounces around the blood vessels, and it causes a lot of damage. And it causes a lot of damage because the blood vessels, as we know from GCSE bio, are one cell thick to allow the nutrients to easily diffuse through the membrane and stuff. So it's only one cell thick. So that means when sugar and other substances get in there, they kind of like rip apart the blood vessels. So there's damage. And then the body's inflammatory system, which is kind of like the repair system, comes into play. However, if you're consuming sugar or other toxins like all the time, then it's like it turns from inflammation to chronic inflammation, where it's always trying to repair it. And chronic inflammation, the book posits that it's the reason for a lot of lifestyle diseases like cancer, stroke, diabetes, heart disease, and diseases of that nature. So that was really interesting. And it also said, it also said that sugar has this effect, but also stress. When you're always under stress, or when you have chronic stress, or when you always have those hormones of cortisol and adrenaline in your blood, they have the same effect as sugar, as well as other chemicals. So that was really insightful, because I'm always hearing things like stress causes inflammation, but I'm never really understanding how stress causes inflammation, if that makes sense. So that was insightful. So you see what I'm saying? I like having these kind of like deeper understanding of these things, rather than just hearing these things in passing, you know. So yeah. Morning, everyone. So unfortunately, there hasn't really been that much to vlog. My days are kind of like the same. I wake up, I go for a walk. Reading is like the highlight of my day. Like, I look forward to reading some of the various books that I'm reading. I want to start reading The Power of Positive Thinking, just because I am in the situation I am with my job, because I feel like I'll resonate with some of the lessons in there better. I'm trying to be more grateful, or I've done that before, but I'm going to try and redo that again. You know, after getting that disappointment result, I kind of like went back a little bit, but I'm going to try and get back to that again, try and not be in the frequency of fear, so that, like, you know, I can attract a good job and not operating from a place of lack and fear and stuff. Because, you know, I don't have a job and I am really scared, and it's September now, but apart from that, you know, life's good. You know, some beautiful weather. I watched TV yesterday, read some good books. You know, you just have to be grateful for what you have. So as I've said, I've been reading this book, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood. This book is really interesting because it goes over Voldemort's backstory. So at the moment, I've just read the chapter that you see in the movie where Dumbledore visits him in the orphanage. And I wrote down 3 things. So 3 things you can take away from the chapter, like the characteristics of like psychopathic people. Number 1 is that they keep trophies. Number 2 is that they don't have friends. They're very friendless. They don't like to accept help. They're very self-sufficient. And number 3 is that they hate being ordinary and they love to feel that they're special. Yeah, the book is just really interesting because it talks about Voldemort's backstory. And I think what's really, really interesting is the parallel between him and his mother. Because his mother, if you read the book, she comes from a very abusive family. And basically what happens is, if you read the story, is she gives a love potion to this muggle that she admires. And you know, it's quite interesting because the way she loves the muggle is a similar sort of story to White Knights, Dostoevsky. And the girl in White Knights also comes from like a not an abusive family, but a family where she was very alone, where she was very isolated. So you see this same sort of reaction coming up, the same sort of like unrequited love coming up all the time. So it's interesting. So anyway, she becomes infatuated with this muggle, so she gives him a love potion, but then she doesn't want to enslave this person that she's in love with. So she releases him from the love potion, but then in releasing him from the love potion, he abandons her. And so she's left to have this baby all by herself. And in the beginning of this chapter, Harry Potter's like, how come she didn't, and basically what happens is she has the baby by herself and then she dies afterwards. She dies, it's kind of like she dies from a broken heart kind of thing. And Harry's all like, why didn't she stay alive for her son? And Dumbledore's like, are you feeling sorry for Lord Voldemort? And Harry's like, no, but she had a choice. And then Dumbledore explains to her that like Voldemort's mother didn't have the courage of Harry's mother because she came from a very like abusive family. So she never had the courage and the strength that Harry's mother did. And it's just super interesting. And then the parallel is that Dumbledore's mother chooses death over a life without love, and Voldemort chooses a life without love rather than death. And that's really interesting. That's really interesting. So she becomes pregnant and she has this baby by herself because her husband abandons her. And she becomes very upset, and there's this indication that because she's so heartbroken she can't do magic. It ties in nicely because Voldemort is defeated by love, and then if you read the other book, which I have, there's this really beautiful passage. I'm just going to read it and then that'll be it. The Lost Prophecy. This is the conversation between Dumbledore and Harry. I haven't any powers he hasn't got. I couldn't fight the way he did tonight. I couldn't possess people or kill them. There's a room in the Department of Mysteries, interrupted Dumbledore, that is kept locked at all times. It contains a force that is at once more powerful and more terrible than death, than human intelligence, than the forces of nature. It is also perhaps the most mysterious of the many objects for study that reside there. It is a power held within that room that you possess in such quantities that which Voldemort has not at all. The power took you to save Sirius tonight. That power also saved you from possession by Voldemort, because he could not bear to reside in a body so full of the force he detests. In the end, it mattered not that you could close your mind, it was your heart that saved you. And that's the Order of the Phoenix, but if you read the last book, you know that, as corny as it sounds, it is love that defeats Voldemort. It is love that defeats Voldemort. I really love those books, so what can I say?